They say you never know what's going to walk through the doors of a pawn shop, and by their own admission, the owners of this one have pretty much seen it all. But even Nick Fulton, co-owner of USA Pawn, couldn't believe what was in a box of stuff a man brought in towards the end of 2015. Fulton says the man got a $10 loan, but never came back for the box. So the store manager went through it to see what could be sold.
Came out for sale, and he was looking through the stuff, and it had a few coins and, bric-a-brac stuff, and ran across the autograph book. And he was very, very close to throwing it in the trash because it really didn't. He started thumbing through it and not seeing, what was in the back.
In the back of this little autograph book are signatures of the giants of the civil rights movement, among them Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Ralph Abernathy, and Reverend C.T. Vivian, known as the Big Three. What was your reaction when you started seeing the autographs that were in that book?
It was shock and awe.
The who's who of the era, like Bayard Rustin and A. Philip Randolph, as well as messages of hope for a better day between blacks and whites from people around the state and as far away as Massachusetts, all in the autograph book of a 16-year-old Lanier High School student named Carol Ann Deere. So who is she? Is she still around? How did she get these autographs, and are they authentic?
I don't know where they were secured, but I know those people were here that day. I think the signatures are authentic.
Hazel Bryant Shields is president of the Lanier High School National Alumni Association. She was a classmate of Carol Ann Deere. She has fond memories of her.
She was very smart. That's the way I remember her. She was very smart.
Shields says Deere was active in a variety of school functions, writing and recording events of the day, even taking pictures for the school newspaper and yearbook.
I remember she had a little brownie. And when I would go home in the evening, she was always talking about where she had been, who she had talked to, how important it was for us to learn about ourselves and our history. And she was just that kind of person.
To understand how a young girl could get such powerful signatures in her autograph book, you have to know that 1964 was a dark time in Mississippi's racist past. Freedom Summer, punctuated by horrifying acts of terrorism against those who sought to bring about social and racial change. Also that year, a walkout by a group of students from Jim Hill, Brinkley, and Lanier High Schools, fed up with the second-class citizenship. Hezekiah Watkins, who also knew Carol Ann Deere, was among the masses arrested.
So we was taken to the fairground and housed there. We was taken to the fairground on garbage trucks with partially garbage inside the truck. And like I said, taken to the fairground, and that's where we stayed for several days, several weeks. They are very real. I think what happened when those leaders found out that these kids actually walked out, they was amazed, and they wanted to find out why and how, who organized it and what. And I don't know whether or not they got the answer, but I remember some of the leaders coming into Jackson saying, "Job well done," and we felt great about that.
I discovered Carol Ann Deere is still around, alive and well. In fact, living in the same Jackson neighborhood she grew up in and working for the state of Mississippi. I reached out to her for an interview about her fascinating story, but she declined. But Carol Ann Deere can take pride in knowing her chronicle 52 years later has become an historic treasure, stimulating a whole new generation to learn about an important chapter in Mississippi and American history.
Our plans was our family would like to donate this or put it on loan to the Civil Rights Museum. We just hope that it's going to provide some history to the state of Mississippi, give us some national recognition, not just for us, but for the state. I mean, this is a one-of-a-kind find, a treasure in someone else's trash.
And an educational piece.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what I found myself, like I'm going back to school and taking a history course.
Someday we'll all be free.
This little 1964 autograph book, jam-packed with historic signatures, almost ended up in the trash until the managers of this Jackson pawn shop examined it further. It belonged to then 16-year-old Carol Ann Deere, a Lanier High School student.
Well, I was just at the right place at the right time. I participated in the civil rights movement, and some of the people that were involved, like Clary Collins Harvey and others, always kept me under their wing and mentored me. And when something of interest would come around, I would be there, and I'd get to meet people and get autographs and take pictures.
Deer was one of dozens of students from Jackson area high schools who staged a walkout that year, ended up under arrest and transported in garbage trucks to makeshift holding facilities at the state fairgrounds.
It was an exciting mood and a restless mood because young people were tired of being second-class citizens. They wanted to do something to make a change in the history and make a change in what was actually happening in Mississippi. And young people, we decided one day at Lanier, where I'm a graduate of, we decided one day to just walk out of class and show that, hey, we're not going to take this anymore. And it happened, and it's kind of snowballed from there.
And apparently caught the attention of some very powerful civil rights leaders.
Yes, it did.
Weren't your parents a little bit concerned about you guys doing that?
Well, yes, but at 16, I knew it all.
So you're going to do it anyway?
Yes.
She says she got the autographs at different times and locations like Memphis, and at least one is the signature of a freedom rider from Massachusetts. So how did her treasured collection end up in a pawn shop? Deer survived the turbulent 60s, only to be victimized by thieves now, while she tried to recover from cancer.
I went to the hospital supposedly for a 5-day stay, and it wound up being more like 5 months. Someone broke into my house and proceeded to take everything, including that book.
I contacted pawn shop owner Nick Fulton to let him know what happened.
I couldn't think of anything more on my mind than to get that book back to her.
So a meeting was arranged here at WLBT, and the little autograph book packed with signatures of some of the giants of the civil rights movement is now back in the hands of the one who collected them.
Ms. Deer?
Yes.
I believe I have something that belongs to you. It's just a humbling experience. Having the three of us, together, everything had to line up just right. Us knowing you reaching out to her, it truly was a hand of God to get that book back in her hands.
I'm happy to have it back because it's a piece of history, and I was saving it for my grandchildren, because my parents taught me that if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Thank you so very much for agreeing to talk with us.
And thank you so very much for finding my treasure.
My pleasure.
Someday